somehow JoePontillo returned so he could do another episode of his show. Yeah, welcome back. It's been a while. Sorry about that. Not really, because you don't care, do you? Somebody cares. I'm not really sure. It is a particularly sad edition of the JoePontillo show because the Pope has died. That's right. Pope Francis. Is he the first? Is he the second? Is he the third? The zero? There should be a zero. Yeah, so he's he was sick in the hospital for a while, and apparently the last person he saw before he died was J.D. Vance, and I think he tried to get him to read his book, and then showed him some of his tweets, and he was like, "That's it." But it's weird because when I started doing comedy, and I didn't realize this, this is the third Pope during my comedy career. That seems like a lot, because growing up there was just one Pope, and now in 20 years, 3 popes. Let's get it together here. I think it's time for the young Pope, the new Pope, 2 popes, 1 Vatican. Let's go. Let's just get a little younger, somebody who's cooler, somebody who's going to appeal to the youth. Pope Francis, he had some tweets. He said some things. There's some cool pictures of him before he was Pope. I think he maybe even smoked weed once. Maybe I'm confusing it with Bill Clinton. I'm not sure. But that's that. So when I started comedy, I realized this. Pope John Paul II was still the Pope. He didn't die until 2005. Because I remember starting comedy, every comedian had a joke about the new Pope. It was Pope Benedict. I think he was he a Hitler Youth or something? Or a Nazi child? I don't know what their it was basically like the Germany equivalent of Mickey Mouse group. Whatever those people are. That like Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake and Ryan Gosling and all those people were the Mouseketeers. I don't really remember, but Mickey Mouse Club. Ugh. And then, which I guess, whatever. But then the Nazis, nobody cared about. I mean, not that everybody cared about, but, they became irrelevant and pushed out. And then he's just like, oh, I guess I'll just become Pope. And everybody had jokes about Pope Benedict when I started doing comedy. And everybody also used Law and Order as a credit. That doesn't happen anymore. But Pope jokes are coming back with a vengeance, and it's good. It'll be good to take a break from politics and talk about, Vatican politics, religious politics. Although I don't know if I'm ready for how toxic a Pope election or a papal election might be. One Pope candidate is going to be talking about, oh, wokeness ruined the Catholic Church. And then the other Pope candidate will just be sitting there going, we need vegan communion wafers. And it's just going to be horrible. The attack ads are going to be just very depressing. And it's going to be a rough few months, I think. I started watching the Daredevil show, Born Again, which seems to... so I've only watched 2 episodes, and it seems like one of those shows... I don't know why Marvel does this. A lot of series do this, but you're watching a show, and the title is named after a character, and they don't really show the character. It's just like, is he born again, or is he not? He just seems like a regular dude who's doing law right now. And they decided to have Wilson Fisk, Vincent D'Onofrio, the Kingpin, become mayor of New York City. He's a supervillain. However, given the recent, people who have become mayor, de Blasio and Eric Adams, and soon to be Andrew Cuomo, great stuff. It's not that far-fetched that New York would elect the Kingpin. I want to know who votes in New York City. The people who vote in New York City must be either the dumbest, the saddest, or just the most completely uninformed people But also, like, nobody really runs against, the candidate. It's so unbelievably rigged. Like, Bill de Blasio, I think, ran against the guy who manages or owns Gristetti's, which, just by default, you would think New Yorkers shop at Gristetti's. They would vote for that guy. Nah, gotta go with de Blasio. And then the second time, he ran against some weird actor that was pretending to be Republican. And then Eric Adams ran against Curtis Sliwa, who's voting for that guy. He's nuts. So here we are. And now there are a few, there's like good candidates, but they're like sort of activist candidates. But New York City is also run by activists. So I don't understand why someone like Andrew Cuomo, who probably killed a bunch of people and then had to leave office for being a creep to women, is leading how is he even allowed to run? And he was governor. How are you leaving the governorship and then going, you know what I need to do next? Run for mayor and be a town. I can name so many more things after my father or my brother. It's going to be a nightmare. The Empire State Building is going to be like the Chris Cuomo Tower or something. He's going to win. And I don't know. But in a weird way, somehow he'll improve New York City. That's what the issue is going to be, because everybody currently that's running things is just so bad, and Cuomo's a bully and a maniac. He's just going to take a shit on any activist. He's like if he bans bicycle lanes and reduces the amount of garbage pails you need to one, he's going to win in a landslide, and he might do it. Gets rid of congestion pricing, everything, or just cuts it down. You can keep your congestion pricing, which, congestion pricing went into effect, and I have worked so hard to avoid it. I think I've only maybe paid the full toll like twice in 3.5 months. But the problem is it was supposed to raise money to fund the MTA. And instead, the only wind their traffic's down. Of course it is. Nobody wants to pay that garbage. But then you go on the subway. Every subway is jam-packed. There's more smells. Smells have increased 600%. And then the only other win they keep touting is that Broadway attendance is up. What the hell does that have to do with anything? No one was sitting there going, if we charge people $9 to come into the city, Broadway attendance will inexplicably rise. No one was thinking that. That is not what. Yeah. Well, now that there's less traffic, I can finally go see a Broadway show. This is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. But the federal government's been trying to shut it down. And it's still not a very popular thing. It has like a, under 50% approval, if even, like maybe even lower than that. And, Kathy Hochul, or we say her name, who looks subhuman. Like that's definitely, like her skin is not hers. She took that from somebody else and threw it over some sort of zombified animated corpse or something. And then whatever it is, the Department of Transportation sent her a letter saying you need to stop congestion pricing. She's like, I don't think so. Take that, New York. Which, the only people who really support congestion pricing are bicycle riders and people who don't want anyone who's not a New Yorker in New York City. Now, I get that to an extent. But we do need tourism in New York City. Otherwise, 90% of businesses will just kind of fall apart very quickly. And I don't think anybody realizes it. Whatever. It's a mess. But here we are. And, man, everything is getting stupid. Real stupid. So, yeah. So, getting back to me starting comedy when the first pope died. Or the last pope. Whatever. Pope 3. 3 popes ago. Why do I measure things in popes, you'd ask? Because they just feel like important demarcation. I started doing comedy when Bush was president. I feel like there weren't a lot of Bush jokes at the time. I think, because when Bush won, nobody wanted him, and everybody hated him, rightfully so. And then 9/11 happened, and and he was this goofy guy. You had the guy whispering in his ear saying, "Sir, 9/11 happened," and he was just like, "Oh, whoa, that was today? I thought it was September 10th. I thought I had another day." What's on the schedule? And so then 9/11 happened, and everybody was like kind of pro Bush. You had like no choice. He's on TV. He cut himself shaving. I remember this interview, and he's like, "Oh, we're gonna figure this out." And at first everyone was like, "All right, yeah, Bush is my president," and then very quickly, they went into Afghanistan, and I think everybody sort of supported that. It's like, well, we have to bomb somebody. Even like the most anti-war, like I'm very anti-war, but I was like, well, we have to bomb somebody. I mean, I get it. That's how they get you though. And then 2 months later, all right, now we're going to invade Iraq. Why? What did that have to do with anything? So that was kind of it. And then that's what brought out all the anti-war people, thankfully. I don't think anti-war people really exist anymore. I mean, sure, people want, Palestinians to stop dying, but every other war, apparently we just have to continue forever. Ukraine, forever. Don't stop. If you, never mind that they have no chance of winning it. We just have to keep that going for as long as possible till there's possibly 0 Ukrainians left. I don't know what people's thought process is. It's very bizarre. There are protests happening against Trump, or there were, but they're not. Of course, they don't protest anything that makes sense. Like he's actually doing multiple kind of bad things. But what are people protesting? Him defunding some government agencies. Hands off my something. I don't know. There was a whole day of protesting, and people went to a park and yelled at nobody, and nothing's changed. And people really need to get lives. I'm sorry. I don't think any of you are really understanding what exactly you should be railing against. Like, there's still wars going on. There's, we're bombing Yemen. This seems not good. Still crazily creating a horrible situation in the Middle East. And what are we mad about? They defunded this putting on weird plays in foreign countries, and no, not the IRS agents. Even though I am friends with somebody who's an IRS agent, but they still have a job, so that's good. Their office just abruptly closed, which very, very weird and intense. But hey, what are you gonna do? But it's a new era now, I guess. I feel like the paradigm has shifted. So we cancel culture was a big thing for a while there, and I agreed with a lot of what was going on, because there are a lot of creeps and weirdos and horrible people in every level of entertainment and government that probably shouldn't have jobs, or should at the very least face more scrutiny and shame for the way they are and the way they've acted in the past. But then it just got to a point where we were just canceling anybody for the sake of canceling people. I think my favorite thing, this is when I knew cancel culture kind of jumped the shark a little bit. There was a comedian on Twitter, very big account. I think her name is Megan Amram. I think she actually wrote for Parks and Rec. And some Asian blogger or something. I don't even know if he was a blogger. He might have just been nobody. He just got lucky. And he basically exposed her for having like some, not anti-Asian, but jokes about Asians, 7, 8, 9 years prior, and posted the screenshots and canceled her. And, when you cancel somebody, you have to go file it at the cancellation office. But that's been defunded by Doge now, so that's another reason why cancel culture's dead. Which is why I won't be selling cancel t-shirts anymore. But, and then she obviously was embarrassed. She was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, horrible. And then people looked at this guy's past tweets, and he had a bunch of horrifying jokes about, molesting his younger cousin and things like that. Great stuff. So everyone is flawed and terrible, and I think it should be more about like what you are, how you treat people. Everybody unfortunately makes bad jokes. I mean, that guy should probably be in jail. But Megan Amram, she, okay, you made some jokes about Asians 8, 10 years ago. Big whoop. Probably everybody did. Really, now it's more like 12, 15 years, And like it's about growing, okay? And unfortunately, some of these types of humors, whether it's making fun of racial stuff or sexual stuff or whatever, there is a market for it. So it's always going to exist in some capacity. But you can be like me and try to make jokes that are just kind of for everybody, which sounds so hopeful. But if you come and watch my act, you'll know I'm not necessarily preaching hope. Anything but hope. Aggressive hope. That's what I preach. Aggressive hope. That will find a new pope that everybody can support. Oh, wow. I did it. I brought it all together somehow. So now cancel culture's dead, likely because it was defunded by Doge. I think that's also what they were protesting. I'm all for like protests and being angry at the government, but I just feel like a lot of really bad things were happening, when Biden was president, and some people were just like, it's fine. My favorite thing is, of course we care about immigrants again, and Joe Biden, I think, deported more people than like ever. He also like brought in a bunch of people, I think, but then threw a bunch of, I don't know, it was a whole big mess. But it doesn't matter. So now the course, cancel culture went too far. Too many people were canceled for things that they shouldn't be canceled for. Plenty of people were canceled. And then other people that should have been canceled kind of got off scot-free. So it kind of all just broke even, I think. But now there's going to be this like stupid course correction where a lot of, insane people on the internet are going to be beating their chest going, yeah, cancel culture is dead. Now I can say retard all the time. That's literally what's happening. I feel like use of that word is on the rise about 700,000%. I think the next big protest is going to be RFK Jr. trying to take food dye out of artificial food dyes out of foods. That'll be the next thing. Hands off my fake food ingredients, you freaking charcoal voiced bastard. Charcoal? I don't know. Sounds like something he's doing, but whatever. So yeah, it is. So, but yeah, popes. It's all about the Pope. He died. It was very sad. Not sad. It's just, it is what it is. And it just reminded me of starting comedy, and that's why I was like, that's a good way to jump back into doing this show. Because it's just so funny thinking about that time. Because I started comedy in like such a different era. Like the internet hadn't really blown up. It was long after the comedy boom had de-boomed. And, it was, it was the mid-2000s. Everybody was still pretty raw about 9/11. Yeah, you could throw 9/11 jokes wherever you want. But in those days, oh no. And, we were fighting the terrorists. We were still sort of united in fighting terrorism. And now we're, most people are like, yeah, I think, we kind of did that to ourselves. But it is what it is. So I remember when I started comedy, this wouldn't happen now. So when I started, you would just do new talent nights until you were cooked. You either quit because it was exhausting, or you just, eventually figured out like, oh, instead of bringing a bunch of people to a new talent night at a comedy club that's not going to book me for real spots, I'm just going to go ahead and book my own show. So that's what I did after like 2 years. Today I probably would have realized it like 6 months in, but you're in your early 20s, you're still in college, you have no idea how anything works. So I started doing comedy, and I did, bringer shows at Governor's, and then, where else? The Brokerage, and McGuire's, and Gotham Comedy Club, the old Gotham Comedy Club location, which was like exactly a block away. But the one that like Seinfeld is supposed to be at the beginning of Seinfeld, in case you've ever wondered where that was. And then there was, it wasn't even Broadway Comedy Club yet. It was called the Improv for 5 seconds until the actual Improv was like, hey, you can't use that name. And they switched it to Broadway Comedy Club. And where else? Oh, and Stand Up New York. Yes. And Caroline's. I did bringer shows at Caroline's, which no longer exists. Thank God. After years of breakout artist series where really I think the people should have not broken out and just kind of stayed where they were. But different different time. And Caroline's was always kind of Caroline's was like the club you wanted to perform at because it just had all this cachet, and I just feel like the people that ran the place were just miserable. Like there was one woman who ran the place, and I remember my friend showed up with a camera to film me, and they sounded like they were going to call the police on us because he was going to he was like, we have a guy here that films people. All right, you don't bring a camera here. How dare you? What? Like, first of all, that would never happen today. You go to a comedy show now in New York City, like, even if there's, like, less than 10 people in the audience, there's 11 different cameras set up. Sometimes I've done comedy shows where there are more cameras set up than there are people in the audience to watch the show. But in those days, every comedy club, I guess, had their, like, exclusive video guy, and they just were, like, very loyal and subservient to them, and they were just like, no. If anyone else brings a camera in here, they're dead. And it was really intense. I thought I was going to get banned from the club. And, when you're doing comedy, you're petrified of getting banned from the club. Now, if it happens, it's funny, but it doesn't happen, thankfully. And who else was there? There was a guy, he was a doorman that shot videos. And he did comedy. So he was a doorman, video guy, and dabbled in comedy. And I remember one time after a show at Caroline's, he just goes, yo, you should really take a comedy class because, I see you up there and, you just, I don't think he said rambling, but he was just basically giving me a lot of notes, and then he was trying to push me to take some guy's class. And I was kind of always against taking classes. I thought, I learned to do comedy on the streets. As in actual comedy clubs, trial and error, being bad at it, being good at it. Because, like, I feel like when I was new at comedy, I would, like, crush on one show and then kind of bomb on the next show. And I think a big reason for it was because my style was just so chaotic. A, I would do different stuff on every show, and B, there was no structure to what I was doing, so I would always either forget and make it weird, or I would, kind of just, ramble and not actually get to a punchline at any point. But then sometimes, like, magic would happen on stage, and even though I didn't maybe have the pacing yet when I started, I at least was funny enough that, like, if a good crowd was there, I was like, yeah, I would kill. But then if the crowd was not so good or whatever, or, like, mixed, not so good. But we figured it out eventually. It only took, 17 years. 14 to 17 years. I'm sorry. But that's the thing about comedy. Sometimes you perform for 3 popes. And the era of 3 popes. And then also, what else? Yeah. And then 2020 happened. Let's fast forward. To the current status where I was like running on fumes by 2020, and I was like, man, comedy's just very cyclical because it's just kind of this thing where it's like you work some clubs, you do some shows, no matter how well it goes, you just then spend the next like 6 to 12 months of your life trying to get rebooked on those things. And I was just like, I don't know that I want to do this anymore. And then comedy didn't exist for a year-ish, at least in the form that we knew it, And at first I was like, am I just not going to do comedy again? And then after like 2 months, I was like, yeah, you know what? It's fine. I mean, I was still doing comedy. I was doing Zoom shows and Instagram shows and then eventually like, back to park shows and rooftop shows and standing on top of a dumpster comedy show. And in a way, that was like more enjoyable than things had been for the previous few years. But I love when I started comedy. I was so like scared to talk to people because in those days you had to like actually call people on the phone to try to get booked for things, which would almost never happen today. Like whenever somebody does want to talk on the phone, I'm just like, how about a text? Well, now I'm good at talking on the phone. In fact, I kind of enjoy it, but so few people want to do it. I'm actually working with a guy right now. I'll give him a shout out. Kenjamin. We're trying to make some big things happen. He's been in radio, TV, all various forms of entertainment since like 1937 or something. And he's wild. He's nuts. He spends his days endlessly creating logos for his various ventures and then sending them to me and being like, what do you think of this? And I don't know why, but whatever. He's a great guy. And then he likes to talk on the phone a lot, which is great, but only between specific hours. He can't talk on the phone before 4:45, and I really wonder what he's doing before that. But I'm glad to work with him. We actually met years ago, back in 2012, and he booked me for a show in the Catskills with Victor Plekoff, and it was a Passover comedy show where the entire audience was Jewish. And despite everything I talk about on stage, of course, still had multiple people come up to me afterwards and go, are you Jewish? Sure. If you want, I'll be whatever you want, as long as it gets me out of here, okay? And but then we didn't talk for a long time, and then we reconnected last year. For some reason, he was trying to get me to perform at his mother's 100th birthday party at a steakhouse in Rockville Center, which was a hot ticket, I'm sure. Ultimately, I think he decided against going with comedy. But we're doing some big things. We just did a great show at the VFW in Westport. I want to give a shout out to the good people at Westport, VFW, mainly Matt Zako. Check out his podcast. I was on that, called The City's Backyard. Very good. Amazing show, honestly. Really amazing show. We're doing it again Friday, July 11th. So make sure to come to that one. We've got, who's on that one? Sharon Simon, me, Steve Rocco, whatever he calls himself now, and hosted by Alex Kolar. We'll have a flyer for that probably sometimes next week. And I think there's a ticket link already, so it's going to be a big show. And then, the shows at Michael's in Island Park have been amazing. It's just so good. And we just did one on Friday. It was me, Chris Roach, and some other people who shall not be named. No, everybody was terrific. It was great. We got an excellent turnout. And it's just, that's what you want. That's what you sweat. You put your sweat and your soul and your whatever and your tears and your blood into this business for 20 years just so you can have a couple really nice shows. And that's it. And then host a YouTube show, and God knows what else is in the works. But whatever. So let me close it out with this. So when I started doing comedy, and it's funny to be not going full circle, but starting comedy in a time when you had to call people on the phone, and half these people you would call, and they wouldn't pick up. There was one guy in Jersey, every time I would call him, it would just go straight to voicemail. And then, once every, 20 times, he'd pick up. He'd be like, yeah! And then he'd be like, hey, it's JoePontillo. Anything going on? No! And that was it. And then I got into with, a bigger booker. And they would pick up all the time. But half the time be like, we're in a meeting. Oh, we have so much going. We're slammed today. We can't book anybody. Call back another time. And then they would, call you back, 3 days later. And be like, want to host an Allentown for $150? So, that's that's how it used to be. So when I was still so young and I didn't want to talk on the phone with people, but so I got my dad to call people on the phone, which thankfully everyone he called in those days is out of the business. One guy actually just died, John Ryerson, who used to run McGuire's, and confusingly, go on stage before every show and be like, "We're the oldest comedy club on Long Island, and what's your age? I mean, what's your weight? I mean, you're a bitch." That's basically what his act was. And then he'd be like, "Here's your host. I think they, won the Long Island's Comedy Festival, or they actually are not even a comedian. They're just a guy I met on the street." And then it would be horrible. And you get paid like $25 a show, which I think was like the standard rate for like 1986 when the comedy club opened. But by 2006, it should have been at least 30 by then. But whatever, he's dead. And then, so my dad, I remember, called that guy to be like, "Hey, how do I audition at the club?" I don't think my dad tried to disguise his voice to make it sound like he was, almost 30 years younger. And he was like, I gotta see your set. And then my dad goes, "Oh, well, I'll be at the brokerage next Thursday." And then Ryerson was like, "I'm not coming to see you at another comedy club." So that's how that one went. And then I think I had him call some guy in Connecticut. And that sort of went very well. But I never followed up with the guy. And then I think I just got my friend Brian McGinnis to call that club and set that up. I was just so not ready to be making phone calls. But now I love it. So let's talk on the phone. In fact, let's take calls right now. All right, never mind. Okay, well, that's the show. We're back. Joe Pontillo. Hit like, hit subscribe. Once again, another shout out to my guy Kenjamin. And then we got Matt Zako and everybody at the VFW Westport. We'll see you in July. City's Backyard, Laughing Gas Comedy, RadioTV.com. Huracan, Dave Donovan. Let's throw him in there. We did another church show in, March, about a month ago. And that went really well, despite the improv. Because we have an improv team that closes out the show. BAM, they're called. I think with a question mark or an exclamation point at the end. I never remember. Doesn't matter. And then Huracan is coming up. I don't know what dates. There's one in June, and then I think there's one in November. And that's it for this show. We're back. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on, all the things, whatever they are. And keep supporting the show. Send me money if you want, or don't. Or ask or request money from me on Venmo. Who cares at this point? And I'm the new Pope.